so positive and negative ions together, they form a formula. And now what happens after that is so we started talking about acids. I told you that an acid is something that produces H plus 1 ions, right? It's something like this. It has H plus 1, that's why it produces H plus 1 ions. A base is something that accepts H plus 1 ions. Okay? And I told you the importance of acids and bases, that it's water that's important because water has two ions. One is H plus 1, the other one is OH minus 1. And I told you that if you add an acid to water, then the quantity of H plus 1 will be higher. And if you add a base to water, then the quantity of H plus 1 will be lower. So all types of solutions, everything, all reactions are happening in water, and all types of water, they've got H plus 1 and OH ions. Neutral ka matlab equal quantity. Acidic means H plus 1 is more. Basic means OH is more and H plus 1 is less. And all reactions depend on that, because all reactions are happening inside water. We did the formula of acids. I told you that an acid is a proton donor. It produces H plus 1 ions or releases H plus 1 ions. Like I told you, HCl, you put it in water and it will break down and it will produce an H plus 1 and a Cl minus 1 ion. So this is what it does. It produces H plus 1 ions. So the formula of an acid is that it must have an H plus 1 ion, right? So a positive ion next to a negative ion, an H plus 1 next to some random negative ion. That is what an acid is. ठीक है, इधर मैंने X लिखा हुआ था. So you can have H plus 1 next to Cl minus 1. They'll combine together to form HCl, which is hydrochloric acid. You can have H plus 1 with nitrate ions, that's nitric acid. You can have H plus 1 with SO4 minus 2. That is your sulfuric acid, H2SO4. ठीक है, you can do crisscross, that's sulfuric acid. H plus 1 के साथ अगर वो PO4 phosphate ion, if you attach it, ठीक है, that one will give you, so that one, you just have to do crisscross. So if you do that, H plus 1 with PO4 minus 3, so 3 utha ke idhar laga do, that's H3PO4, and so on. So if you need to know the formula of these acids, memorize this stuff. Okay? You need to know the names of these acids, and you need to know what is going to happen if you dissolve it in water. These two ions are going to be produced. This HCl के case में ना, HCl if you mix it in water, it will break down to produce H plus 1, and there's this Cl minus 1 ion. Same thing if you dissolve nitric acid into water, what will happen is that it will produce an H plus 1. So the quantity of H plus 1 in water will go up, and it will produce this NO3 minus 1 ion. We're not interested in this other ion, ठीक है? ये दूसरा ion इतने काम का नहीं है, ठीक है? We don't care about that. So these are the formulas of acids, and ये वाला clear था ना पिछला part? Is that clear to everyone?
Yes,
right?
sir.
Achha, and then we did bases. So bases were things that accepted, we just slightly did bases. So bases were things that accepted H plus 1 ions. I told you. So what is that kind of molecule or ion that accepts H plus 1? It must be a negative ion. तभी वो attract करेगा H plus 1 को, because it's if it's got a negative charge, it's going to attract H plus 1 ions, right? So there are three main bases or common bases. There could be a lot of things can act as bases, but the ones that we're going to study is O minus 2. O minus 2 ions are bases. You put them in water and they will start grabbing all the H plus 1 around them. Why? Because O minus 2, a negative ion, will attract H plus 1, which is a positive ion, and they'll end up forming water. Okay? Similarly, OH minus 1, this hydroxide ions are also basic, right? They're negatively charged and they will accept H plus 1 to form water as well. So they'll, अपने neighborhood में ना, they'll kind of absorb all the H plus 1 ions. And the amount of H plus 1 ions will decrease. Carbonate ions are also basic. Okay, so you did three bases. So what are your three bases? I'll just list them over here. So the three things that are basic are oxides and hydroxides and So the last one is carbonates. Okay, you've got 3 types of bases. And remember, a negative ion is not just alone. It's like negative ion akela nahi hoga. It's every negative ion has a positive ion attached to it. So originally, this O-2 ion might have some positive ion attached to it. So I'll give you examples of oxides. Okay, examples of oxides. Like sodium oxide, that's one example. It's got Na, which is +1, and O, which is -2. Remember, O is -2. It's group 6. Group 6 ka charge kya hota? That's -2. If you do crisscross, the formula will be, what will be the formula? It's going to be Na2NO. That's a base. Okay, that's the formula of the compound. You could have other oxides as well, like magnesium oxide. That's Mg. That's group 2, so that's +2. Oxygen is -2. So if you do crisscross, it's going to be just MgO. ठीक है, वो 2 cancel out हो जाएंगे. ठीक है, it's just going to be Mg and O. Examples of hydroxides. Some examples of hydroxides.
Sir,
Yes.
when you did Mg2O2, is it okay to write Mg2O2?
No, that will be wrong. I told you that when you do crisscross, right? Like Mg is +2 and O is -2, right? So I told you that when you do crisscross, you're going to bring this 2 over here, this 2 over here, right? That's the formula, right? But I told you that this number at the bottom, it must be the simplest ratio. Okay, remember, for an ionic compound, this is actually the ratio. Like you have Mg +2 and O -2, right? And this ratio has to be simplified. So 2-2 ratio can be further simplified to 1:1. I mean, a 2-2 ratio basically means that, I mean, this ratio has to be simplified. Like if I have aluminium, right? Aluminium is group 3, so that's +3, and oxygen is group 6, and that's -2, right? So now if I do crisscross, it's going to be that there would be 2 aluminiums and there would be 3 oxygens, right? But this ratio can't be simplified. You can't simplify 2:3, right? That is already the simplest. Yeah. So aluminium oxide is Al2O3, but magnesium oxide is not Mg2O2. It's actually Mg1O1. Okay.
Okay.
And also remember that for an ionic compound, remember this number at the bottom, that's the ratio. Okay. For example, if I do NaCl, right? Na is group 1, that's +1, and Cl is group 7, it's -1. Now if I do crisscross, it's going to be 1-1, right? So basically, you don't write 1. It's just going to be NaCl. So remember, for ionic compounds, this is just the ratio, because the actual ionic compound, like the NaCl lattice, if I show you, maybe this one. Just a second, let me. As I say, if I. No, it doesn't have the charges. Just 1 second. So the NaCl lattice is kind of like this. That's going to have lots of sodium ions. That's going to have lots of Cl ions. A sodium, I mean, that's what the structure of an ionic compound is. A positive ion attached to a negative ion, which is then further attracted to a positive ion, which is attracted to a negative ion, and so on. There's a giant ionic lattice, right? So what does 1-1 mean? 1-1 is the ratio. Like if you have 1 Na+1, you'll have 1 Cl -1 next to it. If you have 10 Na+1 in the lattice, there's going to be 10 Cl ions. Okay, you can go and count the ions. The ratio is 1:1, right? So ionic compounds are all giant lattices, and they'll have lots of positive ions and lots of negative ions all attracted to each other, right? So the formula, that's just the ratio. It's not the actual number. So Na1 Cl1 does not mean that there's just going to be 1 Na and there's going to be 1 Cl. It just means that whatever the number of sodium ions in the lattice, the same number of Cl ions will be present in the lattice. If there are 10,000 sodium ions, there's going to be 10,000 Cl ions, ठीक है? हाथ ये clear है?
Yes.
अच्छा, okay, so I'll just give you examples of hydroxides now. ठीक है, just a few examples. Hydroxide, remember, is OH minus one, so it's if I do sodium hydroxide, that's Na is plus one and OH is minus one, right? ठीक है, remember my point was these three are bases, but they're never going to be alone, right? A negative ion is not all, it's never alone. There's always some positive ion attached to it. So anything that's got any compound that's got any of these ions, that's a base, but it's not going to be alone. It's not just going to be OH ion. There's going to be some positive ion next to it. So NOH is a base, right? It's Na plus one, OH minus one. So that's going to be NOH. Strontium is group 2, so that's plus 2, and OH is minus 1. So if I do crisscross, it's going to be SR and OH jo hoga na wo twice. That just gives you a ratio that for every one SR ion in the lattice, there's going to be 2 OH ions. And we can do examples of carbonates as well. So an example of a carbonate will be, carbonate, remember, is CO3. Would your table banana, make sure you remember that that table, the formula of the ions, the formula of the acids, you have to memorize that. Okay. So magnesium carbonate would be, again, you've got 2, right? So that gets cancelled out. It's just going to be Mg and CO3. I mean, it would have been Mg2 and CO3 twice, right? But the 2 part gets cancelled out. And then you have, let's say, sodium carbonate. That's sodium is plus 1, CO3 is minus 2. So it's going to be sodium, Na2, and CO3 is bracket 1. You don't need to write that. So these are all bases. Oxides, hydroxides, and carbonates. Now, most of the reactions that will happen, they will happen between acids and mainly bases, or related to them. Okay? Most of the reactions, we're going to start making the equations. We know the formulas now. Okay? The formulas are, you've got a positive ion, you've got a negative ion, right? And they get attached to each other. These 3 negative ions, these are bases, because if you mix them in solution, they will accept H plus one ions. मतलब मैं एक show कर देता हूँ what will happen. Like if I add, like here's water, right? And I'm going to show you what a base will do, right? So I'm going to mix NaOH. Now remember, what is NaOH? NaOH is actually 2 ions joined together or attracted to each other. One of them is plus 1, the other one is minus 1. And you've got all these water molecules. So your solution has lots and lots of these water molecules. Either C copy kar lete hain. Dear, that's your solution. Because there's more of these. As anyway, so you got plenty of anyways, you got plenty of water molecules in the solution. Some of the water molecules might be breaking into pieces, and they would be producing H plus 1 and OH ions. Okay, so one water molecule might split and produce H plus 1 and OH ions. Someone somewhere else would also split, and it will produce H plus 1 and OH ions. So the water will have H plus 1 and OH ions initially in equal quantity. Water, remember, is neutral. So the quantity of H plus 1 and the quantity of OH ions, that's equal at the moment. Now, what will happen when I add a base to it? As soon as I add this NaOH, okay, imagine NaOH as this kind of this lattice where there's a, although this is an NaCl lattice, positive or negative ions wala lattice koi hai yahan pe. So imagine NaOH as a bunch of three-dimensional. So imagine NaOH as a bunch of Na+1 and OH ions all sticking to each other, right? As these tiny atoms, ions, positive ions and negative ions, they're all attracted to each other. That's what NaOH looks like. The moment you're going to mix it in water, the ions will get scattered. When you vigorously stir it in water, the water molecules are going to bump into it, and the ions will get scattered. They were all sticking together. The NaOH ions were all sticking together, but now when you dissolve it in water, the ions, they get scattered. So Na+1 उड़ता हुआ कहीं और जा रहा है, OH ion कहीं और जा रहा है, ठीक है? This is what happens to all ionic compounds. They all get scattered into ions. जब आप नमक dissolve करते हैं ना water के अंदर, the white salt, this is what happens. The whole crystal, it completely gets scattered in water. So here is what a base will do. So what did the NaOH do in water? It produced a lot of OH ions. What did I tell you about OH ions? What did I tell you? I told you that OH ion kya karta hai? The OH ion attracts H+1 ions, right? This is what I told you. So all of a sudden in your water, you've got a lot of OH ions, right? Okay, let's zoom in on this. You got an OH ion. Where did it come from? It came from NaOH, right? So what will happen? It will start attracting an H+1. So this H+1 goes and gets attracted to the OH ion. And when they combine, what do they do? They end up forming a water molecule. So a blue water molecule is going to be produced, right? So the OH ions that are coming from NaOH, ye ek aur OH ion hai, this one. It will attract this H+1, it will grab it, and the OH ion and the H+1 will combine and they will end up forming water molecules, right? So इस तरह करते what will happen is that the OH ions that you added from NaOH, they've started grabbing all the H+1. So the quantity of H+1 ions in water is decreasing. And the quantity of OH ions is increasing. Ab count karo zara dekho kya tha. Pehle equal tha na, now you've got just one H+1, right? And you've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 OH ions, right? So the quantity of OH ions is going up and the quantity of H+1 is going down. That means the solution is turning basic. It's got a lot more OH ions and it's got a lot fewer H+1, okay? So that is what adding a base does. Ye clear hai? मैंने ज़्यादा detail में explain कर दिया, but is that clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
ठीक है, बाकियों clear है? Amna, Had, Ayan.
Yes.
But remember, but this is just for your understanding. It's what is more important is you memorize the ions, the name of the ions. Plus now let's move to the equations. So we're going to start with the first equation, the very first equation. And the first equation is an acid plus base produces salt plus water. That's the first reaction that we're going to do. The very first, they're like 7, 8 equations. And you have to get remember, chemistry is all about making chemical equations, balancing them, and they should be on your fingertips. Memorize this stuff, memorize what a carbonate is, life would be easy, okay? So first equation number 1. So an acid and a base react together. So acid plus base, it's going to produce salt plus H2O. As it's going to produce salt plus H2O. Acid plus base produces salt plus H2O. What happens is the acid produces H+1 or releases H+1. The base accepts H+1. This is basically what's going on. So let's think of an acid. Let's think of HCl, hydrochloric acid. So why is that an acid? Because it's got H+1. Remember what an acid was. It's H+1 combined to any negative ion. That's what an acid is. So the acid is capable of releasing or giving an H plus 1 to someone because it has an H plus 1. Achha, what's a base? Let's take NaOH, a hydroxide. So that's a base. So I've got क्या होगा, Na plus 1 and OH minus 1, right? So NaOH, right? That's going to be my base. ये plus 1 and minus 1 हटा देते हैं, ठीक है? That's the formula. Actually, remember the charges don't go anywhere. You just don't write the charge because I mean the charges are still there. I mean this is plus 1 and this is minus 1. ठीक है? Remember that the charges don't go anywhere. Overall, the whole thing is neutral. Like if you one of your ion is plus 1, the other one is minus 1. So if you take the overall charge, that's going to be 0. So which is why you don't write the charge on the whole thing. But remember this, Na be plus 1 and the OH is still minus 1. So anyways, what is the reaction? The reaction that's going to happen is a salt is going to be produced and a water molecule is produced. So a water is produced. Okay. Water को वैसे ही लिख दो. You got water over here. How is a salt produced? This is how you're going to produce salt every time. I mean, this is just a hack of figuring out what the formula of the salt is. Get rid of the H in the acid and replace it with the metal ion, that is, or the positive ion in the base. Okay, so if you get rid of the H in the acid and replace it with Na, you'll get NaCl. मतलब इधर मैं उसको दिखा भी देता हूँ कि I've got HCl. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of H and replace it with Na. That's going to be my salt. The only thing is I have to do crisscross again. Na is group 1 plus 1, Cl is minus 1, so it is actually NaCl. That is about it. That's my first reaction. That's my first equation. And we can go on about this. It's the same. Every acid-base reaction is going to be the same. एक और कर लेते हैं. Let's pick another acid. Let's pick sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid was, how was sulfuric acid formed? It was formed when you had an H plus 1 attached to an SO4 minus 2. So the formula came out to be H2SO4. That's what sulfuric acid is. ठीक है, ये था H2SO4. We did build that. ठीक है, all the names of the acids are written over here. So that's, you were talking about H2SO4. Think of another base, another hydroxide. Maybe let's take strontium hydroxide, right? Sr with OH twice. So I'm going to take another base. So strontium is group 2 plus 2. Hydroxide, that's OH minus 1. So it's going to be Sr and OH twice, right? So how did I tell you to form this salt? Water the form hoga yoga. This is an acid-base reaction. So you'll have water, which will be formed, right? All you have to figure out is what is the salt. So what did I tell you? I told you that acid ka jo H hai na, just get rid of that and put strontium in its place. That's it. So instead of H2SO4, it's going to be Sr and SO4. And you should make the formula again. Sr is plus 2, group 2. SO4 is minus 2. So what 2 karne ka koi fayda nahi. It's just going to get cancelled out. It's going to be Sr SO4 only. You clear the first equation. We're going to do a lot more of these, but is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just making the equation. Like if I have, Ravi, a question hai? If I have nitric acid, right? ठीक है, how was nitric?
No, sir.
ये नहीं clear? तो ये clear है कि मतलब ऐसे इससे पिछला तो clear है सारा कि नहीं? रवि पिछला part clear है? अच्छा मैं फिर उधर ही करूँ कि एक सेकंड. First thing, this is something that you have to remember. Okay, what are your acids? Okay, acids produce H plus ions, and these are the formula of all the acids. Crisscross karo, you'll get the formula of all the acids, but you have to memorize this. Okay, no one is going to tell you okay, what's carbonic acid. You have to know a carbonate ion combines with an H plus 1 ions. If you do crisscross, it's going to be H2CO3. Okay, similarly, phosphorus acid, that's PO3 minus 3 ions combined with an H plus 1 ions. That gives you H3PO3. और ये सारे के सारे जो molecules हैं, they all produce or release H plus 1 ions. एक तो ये याद रखना है, and the other thing is you have to memorize the other stuff as well, which is the formula of these polyatomic ions. Every one of them has to be on your fingertip. ठीक है? इन दोनों का कि मतलब कोई भी आपको नहीं बताएगा, कहीं भी लिखा नहीं होगा. You have to remember it's phosphate is this, PO3 minus is -3, nitrite is this one. तो मैं वापस उस पे आता हूँ कि अब bases का हमने discuss किया. What are bases? Bases are molecules or ions that accept H plus 1 ions. So you've got oxides, any compound that has O minus 2 in it, that's a base. OH minus 1 or CO3 minus 2, all of them are bases. So the first equation है ना, this is, इधर मैं ऊपर लिख भी देता हूँ. So इधर top में मैं लिख देता हूँ. What's an acid? It's H plus 1 combined with any negative ion. That's what an acid is. An acid just has an H plus 1 in it. What is a base? Base is oxygen with a charge of -2, or it might be OH with a charge of -1. Okay. So these are your bases, oxides and hydroxides. So यहाँ पे I have, and remember, a negative ion will not exist alone. There's going to be a positive ion next to it. This HCl में H plus 1 will not exist alone. There's going to be a negative ion attached to it. अच्छा ये मेरी base है. It's NaOH with HCl. इधर नीचे एक और reaction कर लेते हैं. I've got nitric acid, right? And I've got a base, let's call it potassium hydroxides. K group 1 mein, that's +1. And hydroxide is OH with a charge of -1. The formula kya hoga? It's going to be K plus 1 and OH. बस KOH होगा, ठीक है. K is +1 and OH is -1.
Potassium hydroxide.
हाँ क्या Swaip? Yes. अच्छा, so you've got these two things. You've got a base and you've got an acid. अभी और कुछ नहीं समझना, ठीक है. All you have to know is, forget everything else. All you have to know is how is the equation going to be made. You have to know that this is a base because it's got a hydroxide in it. Anything that's got a hydroxide in it is a base. And you have to know that this is nitric acid. You have to memorize it. We just wrote the formulas and you have to know this is an acid. Next to cheese, that is, okay, what is produced? A water molecule is going to be produced when they react together. And a salt.
Potassium nitrate.
Okay, and a salt is going to be produced. And the way I told you to figure out the formula of the salt is get rid of the H in the acid and put the potassium in its place. The potassium H ki jagah aa jayega. So instead of HNO3, it's going to be KNO3. And K is +1, NO3. If you look at the table, it's got a charge of -1. So it's going to be 1, 1, and iska matlab it's just KNO3. That's it. ठीक है. So abhi filhal we're not dealing with how the equation, why is the reaction happening. ठीक है. We're just trying to figure out how to make the correct formulas. That's it. अभी मैं थोड़ी detail में जाऊंगा कि why this reaction actually takes place. I mean, the reason this reaction takes place is the H over here, where did it go? The H actually ended up getting absorbed by the OH ion over here. वो जो H है ना and इसका जो OH है, they ended up forming water. What is left is the salt. So basically you had K and NO3, that's the only thing that's left. So that's your salt. So you can think of it that way as well. कि अगर इसको दूसरे तरीके से देखें ना, what you can also think about this is कि the acid has H plus 1 and the base had OH minus 1. The two combined together and they ended up forming water. And whatever is left is your salt. जो पीछे रह गया ना, बच गया, that's your salt. So K and NO3 were just left behind, and that's basically your salt. So you can think of it that way as well. So I can pick any acid. Phosphoric acid कर लेते हैं अब. So phosphoric acid is H3PO4, and I can react it with any base, let's say magnesium hydroxide, right? Now Mg is +2, OH is -1, so magnesium hydroxide is Mg, OH twice. Just it's an acid-base reaction. What will happen?
Magnesium phosphate.
ठीक है, so H and the OH will combine together, and they will end up forming water. ठीक है, so the H and OH, they will end up forming water. What ions are left behind? It's MgN and PO4. ठीक है, these are the only things that are left. So that is your salt. That's MgN, PO4 are left. Now, whenever you make a formula, make sure you do crisscross. Mg is group 2, so it's +2, and PO4 is -3. Mg का कितना पता लगा? It's +2. It's in group 2. Anything that's in group 2 is +2. PO4 -3. It's given in the table. It's -3. So if I do crisscross for this, it's going to be Mg3, and the PO4 will be twice. Okay, that's what my salt is going to be. Okay, so that's itna soch lo. Okay, this is how you're going to produce the formula of the salts. Okay, so koi bhi acid-base reaction hai, the base accepts the H+1 from there, so the OH ion accepts the H+1. These two combine together and they end up forming water. Whatever is left is your salt. और अभी कुछ नहीं सोचो, बस equation. Just make sure you know how to make the formulas. Some other acid, let's say hydrochloric acid, HCl, reacting with another base, let's say aluminium hydroxide. Now aluminium is +3 and OH is -1, so it's going to be Al and OH3. Actually, one thing you would notice is I'm not balancing the equations yet. I don't care about balancing yet. I mean, there's 3 Mg's in this formula. There's just 1 Mg over here. We don't care about that. I'm just making formulas. I'm just doing basic crisscross. I'm not balancing it. So I don't care if there's 1 Mg or there are 2 OH ions. वो हम बाद में करेंगे. ठीक है, now look at this reaction. You've got HCl. HCl has H+1 and Cl -1, right? And the base has OH -1. What will happen in this case? Same thing. Okay, the H+1 over here and the OH ions, they're going to combine together and they'll end up forming water. Or कौन से दो ions बच गए? You got Al and you got Cl. Okay, these are the things that are left behind. So Al is group 3, so that's +3. What is the charge on Cl? It's group 7. Group 7 means -1, right? So what will be the formula? It's going to be Al and Cl3. Okay, that's going to be the formula of the salt. So acid plus base produces salt plus H2O. Okay, and this is definitely not balanced. Okay, there's only 1 Cl, yahan pe 3 Cl hai. We don't care about balancing. I'm just doing crisscross. I'm just making basic formulas. एक और quickly कर लेते हैं. I've got let's say another acid, sulfurous acid, H2SO3, and I've got barium hydroxide. Barium is group 2, so that's +2, and hydroxide is OH -1, so it's going to be Ba, OH2. These are the formulas of the acids and the bases. What will be produced? The H and the हाँ क्या होगा पीछे?
Barium sulfate.
Not sulfide. What is the name of SO3? ठीक है? याद रखना, you have to remember this table. Where's the table?
Yeah, I got little confused between sulfate and barium.
Remember, SO3 with a charge of -2 is actually sulfide. Sulfate is SO4 with a charge of -2. So मैंने कहा था copy
barium sulfide.
I told you you could write the names of the acids and the name of the ions on the first page of your copy. ठीक है? अच्छा, first thing, ठीक है, barium sulfide. So OH and H will combine and they will form water. वो हो गया. And what's left? It's barium and SO3 are left. So Ba is +2 because it's in group 2. SO3 ka charge, how did I figure out the charge of SO3? I looked at the table above, right? It's SO3 with a charge of -2. Or when it's +2 and -2, then you pretty much don't do anything. It's just Ba SO3. TK, you do crisscross, it's going to come out to be Ba SO3. I said, again, just repeating this. At the moment, all you have to know is, this is it. All you have to know is, okay, acid identify karna aana chahiye. What is an acid, right? What is a base? When they react together, the OH and the H will combine and they will form water, and what's left is your salt. So that's your equation. Although it's not balanced, but we have got, at least we've gotten the formulas right? HCl, aluminium hydroxide ka formula, this is AlCl3. Yeah, clear? Is that clear, this part?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
और कर लेते हैं थोड़े से और ना कि अच्छा, HCl with iron 3 hydroxide, right? So iron 3 means that iron has a charge of 3 plus. Hydroxide means OH -1. So it's going to be FeOH3, right? So you got an acid, you got a base. And what will happen? क्या बनेगा? H और OH तो मिलके they'll form water, right?
Iron chloride.
ठीक है. And what's left is iron and Cl. So Fe is, the positive ion is usually written first. Fe is 3 plus and Cl is, so it's going to be FeCl 3. Crisscross karoge, theek hai, it's going to be FeCl 3. Achha, plus hydroxide is not the only base. It's you've got oxides as well, right? हम तो hydroxide पे शुरू हो गए थे. You got oxides as well, O-2 as well. So we can do some reactions with that as well. Let's say phosphoric acid, which is what is the formula of phosphoric acid? It's H3PO4. And I'm going to react it with an oxide, which is, let's take magnesium oxide, O-2, Mg is +2.
Magnesium phosphate.
Okay. So it's maybe the same thing. Exactly. So the same thing will happen. The H and the O will combine and they'll form water. And what will be left is Mg and PO4. That's your salt. Mg is group 2, so that's +2. PO4 is -3 in the table above. So it's going to be Mg3 and PO4. PO4 will be twice. Okay, clear?
Yes, sir.
So that's your first equation. And the only way, remember this, the only way you can have this on your fingertips is, I mean, it has to be on your fingertips. The only way you need to memorize this. First thing, this one. Acids, what are the formulas of these acids, right? What are the ions that actually make up these acids? Nitrous acid, you have to know that it's HNO2, right? and it's made up of H+1 with NO2 -1. That's what nitrous acid is. If somebody is going to ask you about if phosphate, my screen is hanging up. Nope, it's gone. अच्छा नहीं वो चल नहीं रहा. So लेकिन टेबल के जो वो है ना मेमोराइज करना, that's extremely important. ठीक है. अच्छा I'm going to एक small मैं अभी भेजूं in the classroom. Make sure even if you get it wrong, it's fine. ठीक है. There's nothing wrong with it. Attempt it and submit it. ठीक है. ये एक छोटी सी वर्कशीट में भेजो on these equations and I'll share the board link again. ठीक है. चलो ठीक है, कल बात करते हैं, बट मेक श्योर यू डू योर वर्क. ठीक है. ये और इनके रटे लगाओ, ये जो 2 टेबल्स बने हुए हैं.
ओके सर.
ओके सर.
चलें. ओके.
हाफिज.
अल्लाह हाफिज.
अल्लाह हाफिज सर.